Here at Blossom Children's Center, we work with a lot of children with sensory processing disorder. And I'm going to talk today a little bit about how sensory processing disorder looks with this cup demonstration. So the first cup that I have here, the green line, this is going to indicate a client or child or adult that does not have sensory processing disorder. So in general, during our day, we encounter the 5 senses that you might think of: vision, auditory, tactile, olfactory, which is our smell, and gustatory, which is what we taste. But there's 2, maybe 3 other senses that we don't think about. One is proprioception, which is the input to our body, tells us where we are in space, and vestibular, which is movement, which helps us understand balance in our body. The 8th sense is interoception, which is the feelings in our body that tells us if we're hungry, if we're tired, if we're sleepy. All that input is coming at us all day long. And so these pom-poms are going to kind of represent in a day that we, without sensory processing disorder, are being hit with smells and sight and touches and vision. And at the green line is where we want to be. This is optimal learning. And so during our day, we get to that line, and as we get over that line, we can take a break, we can get a cup of coffee, we can go for a walk and modulate ourselves back down to this green level. We do it without even thinking. There are many kids that have a system that can't process all that input. And the yellow cup is going to indicate some of our kids or adults that have an over-responsive system. So I want you to think about that in a day, when our child wakes up, they may start their morning with some sensory input in their cup already, and they haven't even got out of bed yet. So they've woken up and it's too loud. Maybe there was a siren or an animal, so the input goes in and they're starting to fill their cup. Maybe then they didn't get enough sleep, so that's more input to their day. They finally get out of bed, they go downstairs, and no breakfast cereal that they wanted. That is hard for them to process that emotion. So their cup is filling. They eat breakfast, they get ready to go out the door, and it's raining. So now their cup is filling. And rain, that might dysregulate and make them upset a lot. So you can see they have hit above their optimal learning line, and they haven't even gotten to school or therapy or wherever they need to go for the day. So they finally get to where they're going, and maybe it was too hot in the car, and so their cup got filled. We might not see any dysregulation or discomfort going on, but it's getting there. It might be rising. We might see an emotional response, a behavior response at this point, and these kiddos just they don't have a way of processing all this to regulate back down. So they get to where they're going and they step in that puddle, and all of a sudden their cup is overflowing. We have another kiddo that he's under responsive, or she is under responsive. This friend is very different than our over responsive friend. They might start the day and waking up in the morning, and they have lots of sound and touch and funny smells, and it's like, that's all it took. And they're like, yeah, that's okay, that's okay. And so they get up and they have breakfast. They didn't have their breakfast cereal. It might bother them, but not that much. So then we're trying to get them going. They kind of move a little bit slower. Come on, we got to get in the car, get your shoes on. We might have to make more input to their body, more touching, more smells, more sights, more sounds. And we put those senses in to them, but it's still not getting up to that optimal learning because they're under responsive. Their body just needs more input to wake up. So these kiddos might come to get in the car, they're now getting to school, and they're filling up, but they take so much input to fill up, and they're still not even at their optimal learning line. So we get to the clinic, to therapy, and they need OT to help give them more input. They need swinging. That's going to help fill them up. Our sensory seeker or our sensory craver. So if you see this cup, I made it red because we have to watch these kids. They not only do they need a lot of sensory input, but they can spill fast. The problem is there's this hole in the bottom. And our friends that seek input might be our friends that are constantly moving because they need input. They want to swing. They want to jump. They want to be touching you. They want to be constantly talking. And as they're doing this, their cup is filling, but it's leaking and it's falling out. All these pieces are falling out. So they thought they filled it up and they thought they got to that line, but you can see it's leaking, it's falling out. So we as adults and caregivers, we need to give them more. And we think we're giving them enough because it's falling, it's leaking, it's coming out. And what can actually happen with these friends though, is we can give it to them too fast that it's not leaking fast enough and it spills. So while this friend, they need it to stay at that optimal level, we have to find that just right point because we can fill it too fast and do too many spins, too many jumps, too much touching, too much noise, and it will spill over. This helps parents, caregivers, clinicians try to understand sensory processing disorder. So when you see a sensory meltdown, think about kids that are over responsive. Maybe they have too much going on and they need to be removed so that their input gets processed, all that sensory input gets processed down. Maybe your kiddo is just kind of hanging over in the corner and you're like, look, he's doing great, he's behaving really well. But in reality, he might need more input. And then if they're really melting down and they absolutely can't come back to baseline, really think about it. Did I give them too much? Are they leaking out? Do I need to just provide a just right amount?